If you haven't watched a Korean television serial, a K-drama yet, you are seriously out of the loop. Korean pop music has an enormous following across Southeast Asia, and although some musicians, like Psy, have become briefly visible to mainstream American audiences, they have yet to gain a permanent foothold. Korean television, however, is making dramatic inroads, and yes, it's all subtitled. When I first started watching K-dramas a couple of years ago, the friends and colleagues I mentioned my newfound obsession to were both amused and puzzled. Why would I want to watch something that I had to read to understand? Well, as anyone who's become interested in K-dramas can attest, there is a point at which you become a little like the character Cypher in The Matrix, who tells Neo at one point when he's looking at you see are screens that have numbers in front of him. He's like, I don't even see the code anymore. It's like all I see are blonde, brunette, redhead. And it's a little like that. You start to overlook the subtitles a little bit consciously and just enjoy the story that you're seeing. Why are K-dramas so popular worldwide? You see them liked on Facebook by girls in hijab, guys in Africa, and so on and so forth. And why should they become more popular in the US? I have usually summed up the appeal of K-dramas as Jane Austen with iPhones. Korea still has a level of formality in its culture and an old-fashioned obey your elders sort of traditionalism that makes for a good comedy of manners dialogue and also arranged marriage blood feud plot devices that are a little bit more believable than they would be in, say, American or Western European culture. It's super high tech. The Seoul and in South Korea in general is much more wired than the US, with a royal history, which means it can model the latest gadgetry at the same time that it can harken back to the pageantry and costumes of the aristocracy and the monarchy. It's a capitalist democracy, and it has both Christian as well as long ingrained Confucian and Buddhist elements, so it can talk about the religious influences as well. The dramas tend to have lots of romance and also lots of adventure, with relatively little overt sex, which actually makes it much more appealing to a mainstream female audience, I think, which is largely who watches them. There are guys that watch K-dramas. There are a lot of great ones with just action, and this is not to say that guys don't like romance, but it's also very appealing to female audiences. K-dramas are fictional television. So you've got to take, of course, that with a certain grain of salt and not assume, of course, that everybody in Seoul lives in a spacious multi-room apartment, or that people can afford to jet around the world, or other various and sundry elements that are definitely more fictional. But it is interesting to me to learn more about Korean culture through K-dramas. And it's also been, for me, the hook that kind of got me interested in learning more about Korean culture, language, and history itself. How did I get started? People frequently ask me. I was briefly a Hulu subscriber, and they had a drama called Boys Over Flowers, which is probably about 5 or 6 years old now. And it featured one of the major actors in South Korea, whose name is Lee Min-ho. Actually, I wasn't mainly attracted to him, but I later found out that he is one of the key actors. He's like the Southeast Asian Brad Pitt of the 20s and 30s, a millennial generation. And so I started watching Boys Over Flowers, and it just pulled me in. It had great characters, it had great acting, it had plenty of drama and tears and bowing in weird ways that were weird to me at the time, and just all these interactions that just pulled me in. And you know you're really into a drama when you've got tears. the poor girl. You're just really into it. And that was fun. I hadn't had an American television show affect me emotionally, either positively, negatively, or it just, the American shows were so bland and boring by comparison. And you had a lot of hot guys to look at, and they weren't all spouting profanity. And you had plenty of romantic tension without everybody hopping into bed instantaneously. And that really appealed to me. I've started to learn the Korean alphabet, and it is an alphabet, not a symbol chart, kind of like the Chinese have symbols to represent different ideas, ideograms, whereas the Korean alphabet was actually invented in the 1440s by order of a king, and he had it designed so it represented the sounds in the language, and also so it was simple to learn. I had never really been interested in Asian culture before I started watching K dramas. That's kind of something I'm ashamed to admit, but that part of the world had never really attracted my interest before. And K dramas were the hook that grabbed my attention and made me want to know more about what happened in the Korean War, which is for Americans one of our major forgotten wars. Um, why is there tension between North and South Korea? Why is there such a dramatic difference between the two countries? What are the reasons that Koreans want to reunite the two countries into an entirely Korean one nation peninsula? What is the relationship between Korea and Japan? Um, and Korea and China? Just on, why Americans are there, and what influences they've had, and what the opinions are of Koreans toward about Americans. It's just all been very interesting to me. To me, K dramas are the fun. They're fiction. They're fun. The entertainment in the purest and in many ways most innocent sense of the word, but they also started me wondering about more serious issues. How is the Korean culture changed over the past 50 years? Some of the books I've read since really describe Korea as being very, very closed and rigid um, and very, very traditional. And although, as I mentioned before, a lot of traditional elements do remain, it is true that the generations of Koreans over the last 20 and 30 years have really differed dramatically from their ancestors in terms of their openness to international culture. In fact, they make a lot of Americans look extremely insular and narrow-minded in terms of their ability to interact with and understand other cultures. And I've been fascinated by that. Um, that's a serious effect. K dramas, they're not so serious. Some are fun, some are pure innocent escapism. Some try to deal with more serious issues. Um, but they're definitely worth your while. I just check out one or two. If you're into action, I would recommend Iris, which is a good espionage thriller. Voice Over Flowers is classic romance. Let me think of some other good ones. There's some great sci-fi ones. The Master's Son, I really enjoyed. There are a couple of good sites on the internet that offer free watching of various K dramas and T dramas, which are from Taiwan, and J dramas, which are from Japan, and M dramas, which are from Malaysia, and so forth, as well as classic South American telenovelas, which actually K dramas remind me a lot of in some respects. Uh, Two of the ones that I use mainly are dramafever.com and Viki, Viki.com. both of which offer free watching if you're willing to sit through commercials, or have a subscription service if you want to avoid commercials. So, but some of the dramas they have are the same ones, but the translation is slightly different. So if you want to get two views on the Korean language or on Cantonese or some other basic Asian language, I would check out both of them, compare, contrast. It's a good educational experience, or so you can tell yourself. Thanks for watching.